Well, I've been going back and forth all day about whether or not I should even cover this story because it does seem to be getting kind of monotonous all the time reporting the latest that's going on in the ongoing riot saga. Things as far as the riots have gone nationally have kind of calmed down. You still have all the unrest in Rochester, but yesterday we saw what again I think should be considered an escalation in violence. We had a seemingly random attack on two police officers in Compton, which is in LA County, for those of you not familiar, on two sheriff's deputies who apparently, sitting in their vehicle idle outside of a train station, and a guy just walked up, shot them both while they were sitting in the car, and walked away. Now, it was very similar to something that happened a few years ago in New York, where two NYPD officers were shot, and I believe killed, in their cruiser while they were just sort of sitting there doing nothing, which cops do a lot. They just they're in the cruiser all the time, so a lot of times when they're not driving from one place to another, they're just going to be sitting with the car running. Now, if it had just stopped here, I wouldn't necessarily call that an escalation. After all, I just said that a few years ago the same thing happened in New York, and there hasn't been there wasn't in a short time after that any serious uptick in violence. But something that makes this seem different to me is that after these cops, were transported to the hospital and were extracted from this situation, that's not sort of where the story ends. And this is really, what I think has deservedly gotten the most attention out of this whole story. It's not just the two cops got shot. Cops get shot all the time. It's the fact that after the cops were brought to the hospital, there then was a group of rioters who formed outside the hospital at the emergency room, who, according to the LA County sheriffs, were blocking the entrance, so ambulances couldn't get through. Now, apparently the two cops had already been transported there, so I guess they were just, blocking innocent people and probably scaring a lot of folks who were injured at the hospital. And they were, chanting various anti-police slogans and things and saying to the cops who were there that, hey, you're next, and, those two had it coming, and, you'll suck, and just pretty typical stuff. But for there to be no sort of moment of reflection, no respect for two people who are possibly going to die, who are in critical condition in the hospital, that seemed to me to be quite remarkable, because that's not something normally that human beings do to one another. You don't go to the hospital after someone who's has been injured, even if it's someone you don't like, and essentially have a soft attempt at trying to break in and kill them, or at least intimidate them and their family and whoever else is at the hospital. It's just not something we see in societies, in general, anywhere in the world. What this would seem to indicate is a severe disconnect between different members of society. There's a level of hatred I'm just not used to seeing. Now, I think the easy thing for skeptics to say who don't want to make a big deal out of this is they'd say, well, hey, come on. That's only, 16 people that showed up at the hospital. Sure, there's always a few bad apples, but that doesn't mean that there's some kind of systemic problem in our society with these folks who have completely dehumanized, the police. And my response to that would be that, this isn't one lone nut who showed up to the hospital to be nasty and to say some unkind words. This is a group of 16 people. And if there's that many of them, that tells you, well, there were probably other people who also wanted to come and for whatever reason had other commitments. They weren't in the area. They didn't know about it or whatever. But there is enough of a distaste for the police that, once this became sort of somewhat public knowledge, there were enough people who tried to look up what hospital they were in, and then 16 of them who actually decided to go and drive there and cause a ruckus. And so if you're at to the point where, a crowd forms at the hospital, in opposition to the police after they're shot, then you've got a pretty big problem amongst civilians when it comes to their opinion of the police. It shows to me that the distaste for law enforcement is a little more generalized than one might suspect. There might only be a few people at this point who would go so far as to show up to the hospital. But if there's a few people willing to do that, then there's certainly plenty of other people who would agree with what they're doing and just don't want to do it to themselves, or might disagree with the tactics, but sort of identify with the spirit of what they're trying to accomplish. So if we've gotten to this point, I think that it is fair to say that things are going to continue to escalate. Because when you see things like this, I forget what the name of the effect is, but they talk about this in political science. This whole bandwagoning effect that you have when it comes to there being people in the street, and there are no matter whatever number of people show up in the streets to do something, that's going to have a bandwagoning effect on some people. So when you have a small group of people, like 16, there are going to be some folks who say, wow, there's enough people, who identify with these ideas. They're going to see that on TV and go, wow, there's that many people who think like me. I'm going to go out and join them because I don't feel alone. And it might not, if there's only a group of 16, they're only going to attract a few more people the next time around. But the next time, they're going to attract even more people because it's going to be a bigger group. And there's going to be more folks on periphery who say, you know what, there's that many people who agree with me. I'm going to go out and join them. And so then night after night, this is how these sorts of things grow. Now, I don't think that the growth is going to be a night after night thing when it comes to this. But now that, it's been established that there are at least some people who think it's okay to go out and not quite riot, but very menacingly protest in front of the hospital, and in fact, terrorize people by blocking ambulances from entering the emergency room. You're naturally going to see more behavior like this. It's being normalized rather quickly. Not too long ago, if you'd had a situation where an individual just randomly shot two cops, it would have received universal condemnation from all sorts of people, even the would-be anti-police activists. But in this environment that we're currently living in, it's not seen as such an unacceptable thing. It's not being regarded as the worst thing in the world that two cops got shot. And of course, the thing here that we have to look at not only, that could grow is not just the intensity of the anti-cop demonstrators, going so far as to go to the hospital, but also, the killing itself. There are these sorts of acts have the potential to inspire copycats, and I think that with everything that's going on, seeing what essentially are targeted assassinations of police officers is not such a strange thing. It's not totally unexpected. It's not out of left field. With everything that's going on, it's become clear that there's a lot of people who are angry at the cops, and so you're going to have a lot of folks who are considering killing some police officers. And so this guy who tried to kill these two officers is just one person who acted on that urge. And now that he's done it, there might be some folks sitting on their couch who say, you know what, if he can do it, I can do it too. And who now are going to go out and commit similar actions. And when that happens, my guess is that there's going to be less and less people who feel like they have to mourn these individuals. There's going to be folks who feel it's more okay to express their contempt with the officers who have been attacked or murdered. And perhaps we might even see, some more high-profile assassinations. Although I don't know if we'll get to that stage before the election. I don't think that we're necessarily like what happened in 1968, where you saw more political assassinations or attempts. I'm not necessarily anticipating that. I think it's going to be much more focused on the police. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.